Hello, this is Christopher Gutierrez, and this is my presentation on immigration. How did we get here? So, in this presentation, I will be going over the three historical events which have, from my understanding, most contributed to the immigration status as it is now, in terms of how we look at immigration today, why it's such a big talking point in our political climate today. So the three that I understood to be the most important, um, both from this class and from personal experience, are the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Bracero Program, and the creation of the illegal immigrant. That third one's a little weird sounding at first. It's a buzzword that is very often used by politicians nowadays. Um, and yeah, we'll get into it. So, first off, the creation of an other. What I mean by other is not literally, but in terms of the other is the way a society can look at one specific subgroup of people as being in direct opposition to what that society is supposed to stand for. So, this is something that might sound familiar to people living in the United States, for example, but the way this started was a lot, a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is the Chinese Exclusion Act. Um, so, here I have a couple quotes from the readings and from Professor Johnson's lecture that just kind of further emphasize the gate must be closed in reference to Chinese people looking to work inside of the United States. That is Edward Valentine, an elected official in Nebraska at the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Chinese people were portrayed as, quote, marginal members of the human race. That is in the Lee reading on page 90. There is a lot more of that, but the idea being that Chinese people were looked at as something in opposition to what it meant to be American instead of as being in the spirit of being an American and coming here and working hard and creating a future for yourself through labor and perseverance. But simply because they were Chinese, all of those things didn't matter. Um, so here we have in Professor Johnson's lecture a concrete example of what I'm talking about. In 1890, the nation's first residential zoning law gave Chinatown's residents 60 days to leave the neighborhood. So here we have a literal exclusion of Chinese people who were living in a neighborhood and were given 2 months to move out. I don't know if anyone has moved out ever, but 2 months is not a long time to figure out another place to live, especially if you are dealing with financial difficulties or anything like that. So, yeah, this is how Chinese people were first created into another, and then this is the finality of that otherhood, as you could call it, the Chinese Exclusion Act itself. So it started off with the Coolie Trade Act and the Page Act, which restricted quote unquote undesirable Chinese men and women from entering the U.S. to work. So by undesirable, we mean the way it was looked at the time was women. You wanted to restrict prostitutes from coming in. That was the buzzword used at the time in the same way buzzwords are used now. So Chinese men, you wanted to restrict people coming in under coercive contracts and stuff like that. And it almost has a feeling of making it sound like you're trying to help these people from coming in under coercive contracts that basically makes them involuntary servants. And instead of paying them what they're worth, you just exclude them altogether, as if that's somehow a fix. Um, so, and also with the prostitution for the women, a lot of the time that was not true, as was also gone over in lectures. It was just a way to uh, kind of judge people, label people according to what your specific notions on what that person was. And most of the time, those notions were coming from a racist place. So, the actual Chinese Exclusion Act, quote, Chinese Exclusion Act became law on May 6, 1882. The new law barred the entry of Chinese laborers for a period of 10 years, allowed entry only to certain exempt classes of Chinese, students, teachers, travelers, merchants, and diplomats, and prohibited all Chinese from obtaining naturalized citizenship. That last part's very important. Did not let Chinese people become citizens of this country at all. It's true exclusion. Um, Something that will become a theme. We move straight into the Bracero program. So the Bracero program was intended to fill the void left by the millions of men fighting in World War II, and you fill that void using immigrants. You bring people in from Mexico. They help fill the labor void that was left over. And here you see in the lecture, the Bracero program brings in Mexican laborers under a contract labor system, ultimately around 5 million people. It's a lot of people. So these people were brought in to work. They were not paid good wages at all. They were not paid similar wages to their white counterparts at all. And the Bracero program really becomes a case study in the government's ability to control information. As Rosas talks about, the second quote is, the U.S. government placed a high premium as well on curbing the flow of ideas, feelings, and information. I put at the top here, Big Brother is watching. I'm a big fan of 1984, and I think this is a good example of that. They wanted these people to come into work, but they also wanted to make sure that the government was able to control what these people were saying to each other, and that only certain opinions were expressed or developed. Obviously, you can't control ideas. This is something that the United States is still struggling with, but there is no way to control ideas. You can try to suppress ideas, but usually that just makes the ideas explode. So, yeah, the United States government began the process of controlling information amongst populations. Again, it seemed undesirable. I'm using the word undesirable. To my knowledge, I don't think that was in the readings, but I'm calling it like I see it. If you're treating people in this way and you are exhibiting the signs of racism that are shown throughout American history, you would have had to have seen these people as undesirable, even though in reality they are not. And then finally, we go into the era of undocumented immigration. So I'm using the Vargas readings for this, and this is also something that was not in the readings or in the Vargas reading specifically. The era of undocumented immigration is kind of what I'm talking about in terms of what happened after the 1965 Immigration Act. And the creation, this was from Vargas, the creation of the illegal immigrant issue, which is still something that is going on in our modern day. This idea that people are illegal in a land that they once owned, or that they are only going to try to find work and to try to find a future and to try to become American citizens. We call those people illegal immigrants apparently nowadays. So a very important quote in a way that really humanized the plight of the immigrant in this country was this quote, which out of context does not feel very strong, but it's, what would you have done? Vargas, page 71, in reference to him checking a box that marked him as a citizen, even though he was not. And his question is very simple. It's to the people who oppose him, who would oppose him ideologically. What would you have done if you needed the job and you needed to take care of a family or yourself or whoever it might be, your grandma, your uncles, whatever? What would you do? Would you just sit there and let people starve, or would you check a box that says you're a citizen, even though it means you're committing technically a crime? So, and we come to the end here with this quote, which was very powerful from Vargas readings. I come to you as one of our country's 11 million undocumented immigrants, many of us Americans at heart, but without the right papers to show for it. So there you have it. it's essentially the argument of Vargas is that he might have had to check the box that marked him as a citizen when in reality he was not. But if you look into it further, in reality he always was, because he came to this country to work, to build a future, to help his family, and in the process of that, people call him a criminal. I'm not sure what's so criminal about working and trying to feed your family. Um, but it is the era we live in today where a person like Vargas would be hit with the label illegal immigrant. Um, so, yeah, thank you. That was my presentation.